It's Trump's Trials from NPR. I'm Scott Detrow.
Supreme Court justices have issued a major ruling in an election case.
The Justice Department will be relentless in defending the right to vote.
Will you accept the results of the election?
If it's a fair and legal election, absolutely.
The Georgia State Elections Board has made another controversial decision. First, earlier this month, the board approved a rule that could allow some local election boards the ability to refuse to certify results. All Things Considered host Mary Louise Kelly spoke to Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger about that, and you can check out our last episode for that conversation. Here's what happened today. The board voted to require all ballots be hand-counted. Now, that could likely delay election results in Georgia, which could be a problem since Georgia is a critical state in the coming presidential election, and everyone will be looking to see which candidate comes out ahead there. When we come back, WABE politics reporter Sam Gringlas tells us more about it.
On How to Do Everything from the team at Wait, Don't Tell Me, we try to find the answers to all your burning questions.
I'd like to know, how do I get someone to tell me if I smell?
That's the perfect question for us. So we went over to her house and we sniffed her.
Because we care. Listen to the How to Do Everything podcast from NPR.
We'll sniff you, too.
What's happening on NPR podcasts?
Money, power, tacos,
white collar crime,
green parties,
black reparations.
More of the perspectives that make your world a more vibrant place.
NPR podcasts.
More voices, all ears. Find NPR wherever you get your podcasts.
You're listening to Trump's Trials. I'm Scott Detrow. And now, here's Ari Shapiro.
Before we dive into this new rule, a state election board does not often get as much attention as the one in Georgia has been getting. Yeah. Why are these relatively obscure bureaucrats so important and potentially influential?
Well, for one thing, Georgia is going to be a really important state in this presidential election. And so the rules for running that election, they matter a lot. Now, this board and its Republican members in particular are already facing scrutiny for a pair of rules they passed in August that could affect how local election boards certify election results. Those members, they have been praised by former President Donald Trump, and many of the rules they've passed have been crafted by activists driven by unfounded claims of election fraud.
And you reported on those certification rules earlier this week. Then today, the board was set to consider nearly a dozen more changes. Tell us about the rule on hand counting ballots that they approved.
So this rule mandates poll workers in each precinct hand count the number of paper ballots to make sure that matches the total number of ballots that were recorded by the ballot scanner. Charlene Alexander, a Republican who lives in Fayette County, sponsored the rule, and she compared it to, a basic cross-check.
You could be looking at the back. It doesn't matter. You're strictly going to go to the corner, and you're just going to count those ballots. Now, how difficult is that?
Well, it's very controversial, so I assume it's more difficult than she makes it sound. Tell us about it.
So to be clear, this rule is about counting ballots, not tallying votes for individual races that are on those ballots. But nonpartisan election officials testified that even so, hand counts are slower and less reliable, and any discrepancies could open the door for misinformation about the integrity of the election. Plus, officials like Irwin County Election Supervisor Ethan Compton say it's way too late to change the rules.
Over 200 pages of elections code and rules have been implemented since 2020. We have practiced on them. We have trained. We are ready. Do not change this at the last second.
On top of that, the state board's nonpartisan chair, John Verveer, who voted against these rules, he warned about legal problems, too.
If this board votes to implement this rule, I think that we put ourselves in legal jeopardy.
And in fact, Ari, Georgia's Republican Secretary of State and Republican Attorney General told members explicitly that these moves likely exceed the board's power. Yet the three Republican members, they went ahead anyway.
So do the rules take effect? Do they get challenged in court? What happens between now and November?
So today the board was set to consider 11 rules ranging from poll watcher access to tracking mail ballots. The board approved 6 and tabled the others until next year. But it is clear that these rules about certification and hand counts, they are drawing the most pushback. And while, yes, they are currently set to take effect ahead of November, ultimately, a judge is likely to have the final say here. The certification rules are already being challenged in court, and a trial is scheduled for October 1st.
WABE's Sam Gringlas in Atlanta. Thanks for explaining this, Sam.
Thank you, Ari.
Thanks for listening to Trump's Trials from NPR. Keep an eye out for more episodes like this whenever big news happens. I'm Scott Detrow.
Summer is over. You're spending more time in traffic, and the calendar's more full than ever. There is also a presidential election to keep track of. But fear not, NPR's daily news podcast, Consider This, can keep you up to date on the election and all of the other important things happening in the world. Listen to Consider This wherever you get your podcasts.
On this week's episode of Wildcard, actor Jeff Goldblum sings his way through our conversation.
1, 2, 3.
1 is the loneliest number. 2, oh, just the two of us. We can make it 3. Oh, we 3, we're not alone.
I'm Rachel Martin. Join us for NPR's Wildcard podcast, the game where cards control the conversation.